You were here very young, you studied, pretty much lived most of your life here. Did you face any issues?
I still felt the need to really prove myself because I'm a Black woman. The preferred lawyer is a white male. They're usually at the top of the chain. And when you see someone like myself, often the thought is I'm an assistant, maybe to that white male or something, but I couldn't possibly be a lawyer as well.
You've talked about networking a lot, and a lot of my audience, they struggle with that. Even I struggle with it a lot. Sometimes psychologically, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the only Black person in this place. This is not like my safe space necessarily.
I think when it comes to physical networking, you really just need to push yourself. I get awkward, I get shy. It's kind of daunting just going to approach someone that you don't know and talking about yourself or finding a topic to talk about. But I've learned that the first time is hard, but like with anything, with practice, you get better. You get more comfortable, feel more relaxed. And some things you can do to help, before is like breath work. You can take a deep breath.
It's a cliche, but your network is your net worth. I've gotten so many opportunities from people that know me. And these days is even people that know you, not so much about people you know. Oh my God, so many. I read, I can't really understand this document. Anyway, we're going to sign it because you don't have a choice.
Contract law, just some simple principles is very important to know. And one of them is unreasonable terms in a contract, especially if it's like, a unique term in a contract. If you sign your child up to this daycare, you have to pay an extra sum of $50,000 per year. That's something huge that should be brought to your attention. It shouldn't just be sent to you in a contract.
All right. Hello, Annette. Welcome to the Tayo and Noah podcast. So lovely to have this conversation with you again. I know we did have a conversation a few months ago, and it was lovely. And I'm like, wow, you've got to come on the pod to share a lot of nugget wisdom with people in our community, especially as you have a lot of experience, running Amplify Black Women Cause, which is a social cause to help women and basically in the area of finance, career, growth, mindset, which is really great. And really inspired by that work. And for today, I wanted to learn on your experience to share some of your journey as an immigrant here in Australia, some of the issues you've had to navigate. We both know, and we've had that chat, it's tough being especially a Black woman here in Australia, how challenging that journey was, and how you've been able to navigate several issues to be able to get to where you are today, by the way, as a lawyer, and you practice, law in terms of government law and personal injury, which is great. And any other advice you have in terms of career, finances as well, we'll touch on. So I'm really, really excited. And guys, this is a gold mine, I would say. This conversation, I am definitely pumped. But just quick intro, Annette, for people that don't actually know anything about you and they're meeting you for the first time today.
Yeah.
How would you introduce yourself?
I want to start by saying thank you, Noah, for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be working with you and Sync Skills to have some really important conversations. Yeah. And a bit about myself. My name is Annette Cole, obviously. My name is very Caucasian. So oftentimes when people hear my name, they're not expecting me to be a Black person.
Black person, yeah.
But I am African. I was born in Sierra Leone in West Africa. Yeah. I came to Australia as a refugee. We were fleeing the civil war at the time. And I was only 3 years old when I came with my family. So I don't remember anything from back home in Sierra Leone. Haven't had the chance to go yet, unfortunately.
You haven't? Wow.
No, yeah, it's something I wanted to do this year, but I'm seeing how it goes. My mom tells me there's a bit of political unrest with the recent election and everything. But I hope to go in December this year, if not next year. That's sort of...
It would be great. I mean, I'm sure sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I could just go. And Australia is so far away from
Yeah, it's so far from
Africa.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I've grown up here, but I've still got a very strong tie to Sierra Leone. I speak the
Yeah.
language fluently, speak it at home, speak it with friends.
Mm.
I eat the food, cook the food, attend events. So I still
Wow.
very much embrace my Sierra Leone culture. And
Also, though, because like a lot
how?
of people, when they especially come in that young, they
Yeah.
just like lose track. They can't even speak their language. How was it, possible that you're deeply rooted still?
I have to thank my mom because she really ingrained in us, from a young age that we're going to keep aspects of Sierra Leone here in Australia. So she
Oh,
spoke,
that's lovely.
we speak Creole, it's a broken English. She spoke it to me growing up, and I had to
Wow.
respond back in Creole. So that's just how I became.
Creole?
Yeah, it's like a broken English, similar to Nigerian pidgin.
Ah, so you sabi wetin I dey talk right now?
I sabi wetin you dey talk, I dey understand them.
Wow. Oh, it's quite similar. That's great.
Yeah, you see, like you can understand me, I can understand
Yeah.
you. Mostly, sometimes Nigerians, when you speak very fast, I have to think about
Yeah.
what to say, but I get the gist.
Wow, wow, that's great. I mean, we're both West Africans,
Yes.
so yeah, it's pretty close. Wow, that's great. I didn't know that. I see.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's fun code switching, like what I just did,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. Oh,
I can
that's
sound
so
very
cool.
white, very Australian, and then,
Wow.
when I get on the phone, it's very different.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, like the funny thing is that being in Australia, I've met more Africans than when I was actually like back home in Nigeria,
Oh,
and
wow.
that's some of the benefit that you
Yeah.
get, that multiculturalism,
Yeah.
and I think it is so cool. Now I'm learning that we actually speak like similar broken English as
Yeah.
well, which is great. What is your food like? Though? What's like
Food.
some of your popular cuisine?
We
Sierra
have
Leone.
some similarities. I mean, we have like jollof rice, which is
Oh, you
different
do?
from yours, less tomato. Um,
Ah,
but we also have okra soup that we eat,
oh,
and we eat a lot of leaves, like potato leaves soup, cassava leaves soup.
oh. Do you chop your okra as well?
Yeah,
You do. Oh, I know the
yeah.
Asians sometimes you chop it big, and that's the okra.
No, 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 not like that. I
Wow.
recently also found out that African Americans eat okra, but they fry it. It's called
Yeah, yeah. I
fried
mean,
okra. It
okra
sounds,
is used different ways. Sorry.
yeah, it's like foreign to me because I was like, oh wow, I've never thought of frying it. We cook it in the soup with the meat and everything.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to try your meal one day. Like I'll
Yeah,
look for
one
Sierra
day.
Leone. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so cool. All right, that's great. So we learn about food, and so coming here, that young, you were
yeah,
just 3 years old, and what, like I'm sure there were a few challenges growing up in a space where I don't know, like here I realize I'm black. So for
yeah.
you being that young, and I'm sure maybe like you're one of the minority in class in pretty much everywhere. Like how was that journey for you?
It's definitely something I noticed even from a young age. I
Mm.
went to a primary school in kindergarten. And I remember there was a time when I was in class and I started crying. And my
Wow.
teacher said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Because no one here looks like me." I remember it very vividly. I was
Wow.
just in kindergarten, but in the entire school, I was the only black person. So from
Yeah.
kindergarten to year 6, there was no other African at all. So I was so young, but I noticed like that I stood out. I noticed that there was something different about me.
Yeah.
I couldn't see anybody similar to me. And I remember crying, and my teacher, she took me outside and she comforted me and she said,
Mm.
I may not look like anyone here at the school, but I'm welcome and I'm accepted and that I'm a part of the school community. And then I remember that conversation because I immediately felt better. But as
Wow.
I've grown up, I've always reflected on that. Like I was so young, I was only like 5 or 6, but it's something I was able to pick out, which means it was just very apparent. It doesn't matter the fact that I grew up here in Australia, I
Yeah.
still have black skin.
Yeah.
And so I'm still going to feel like an other sometimes. And I had another experience in high school that was quite challenging because I moved to a school in year 9. And when my mum moved me there, the school had placed me in the English as a second language classes. So all the classes they put me in were for people who had recently arrived. So now I was in year 9, I was like 14. So obviously I've been there since 3. I know English. But they did that just on the basis that I'm black. They saw a new black family come and enroll a child. So they said, okay,
Yeah.
we'll put her in these classes. And I didn't realize at the time the impact of it because I was just a teenager. I was just like, I don't really care about school anyway. But when my mom found out, she was determined to do something about it. So she called the school and set up a meeting with the principal and expressed her anger and frustration that they hadn't tested me because that's the usual process. When you have a
Yeah.
new student, you give them some
Yeah.
tests to find out their capacity, what sort of classes to put them in. But they had just put me directly into those classes for people who don't know English. And the principal apologized and said it must be some kind of mistake. But my mom wouldn't take the apology and she just withdrew me from the school immediately. And at the time, I didn't really understand. But growing up as a
Yeah.
Black woman now, I see that my mom was actually advocating for me and that it was very important. And, she saw that I was being treated differently and it wasn't right. And so that really inspires me, like even to this day, to stand up for people, to advocate for those who don't have a voice or who don't even realize that they're being treated differently, treated discriminatively against.
Wow. Wow. That's so powerful. I mean, seeing that happened, I'm so sorry, at a young age, I mean, can be very, very challenging. I mean, even at this age for me, like, I feel so much nerve sometimes when I get into some high stake rooms and I'm like the
Yeah,
only black person. And I'm like, oh, trying to relate that to you as you're young and everywhere you see your blackness on
yeah,
display and you have to think about it. More importantly, now, the way things are so polarizing, the political space,
yeah,
the way immigrants are being like seen like the problem. I'm looking at the young people now that probably in like similar situation and don't have that
mm,
comfort, that person to tell them, sorry, you're part of us, you're
yeah,
welcome. Rather, they may be getting comment like, go back home, you're not
yeah,
welcome here. Hopefully the kids don't do that, but there are some people who have that view that that attitude, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
totally can relate on that level. So must be really, really challenging. And I can see why you're so passionate about helping people, advocating for people. So thank you so much for that. So that experience, now as you became more aware, about the impact, and did that in any way like shape what you studied in school, and your law background now?
yeah. Um, yeah, so I decided to study law purely to help people. I
Mm,
wanted to do something about challenges and injustices that people face.
mm,
I'm very passionate about some global issues like human trafficking, but even some local issues like discrimination and family law. And family law is actually the reason I decided to pursue law because
mm,
when I was a teenager, I witnessed my family member go through a really difficult family law battle. And I saw the distress that it had on my family. And at the time, the lawyer used to come to the house and she would give me these brochures to read about family law. And so I would read them and I thought it was very interesting. And
mm,
seeing how my family member was treated, it just really gave me the motivation to want to pursue law. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to study law so I can help people like my family who are trying to navigate a legal system that sometimes overlooks them and they don't understand and it's not for them. So that was the driving motivator.
Wow, that's so powerful. But for people who don't actually know like a deeper understanding of what family law is, like can you explain that to a 5-year-old?
Yeah. So family law involves families. So it's everything from divorces and
Mm,
separations, orders for parenting where there's children between two adults who are now separated, and
mm,
property settlement as well, where there's a separation and there's properties and assets that are jointly owned.
mm,
And it also involves family and domestic violence. So providing orders that are protect someone who's at risk of harm or protect the children. So that's family law in a quick
mm.
nutshell.
Wow, and that's what you do right now, or like,
I did do it previously, but it was quite heavy. You know, I had
yeah,
a dream when I was younger to practice family law. But then when I got into it, it was a bit too much for me. And I think I learned from that. Sometimes, you know, you want something in one season, but as you grow and develop and, you
yeah,
know, circumstances change, it might not be exactly what you want, but that's okay. And it took me a long time to learn that because sometimes we force ourselves to stay in places that we've outgrown or
yeah.
places that don't benefit us anymore.
Wow, that's so powerful. How did you come about like, wow, this is not what I want to do. Now I know what it is, um, and I think I should pivot. Like, how did you come about that? What experience shaped that?
I think just the complexities, because it was interesting to learn about, but you know, in real life, it's very complex, and
Mm,
particularly separated partners can be very vicious towards each other, and you kind of being in the middle. There's a lot of emotional distress, anger, frustration that gets taken out on you, and it can take a toll on
oh,
you.
wow, really? So
Yeah.
they're not like professional in the midst of that. Like they're both like going.
No, because the other party sees you as like an enemy, like, you
Oh,
know, so it's like you're representing someone
to
that they
one
used to
person. Oh
love,
yeah.
but now they hate. So you representing that person is like you are now the enemy.
Ah, yeah. So it's different from mediation where you're like trying to. There's a difference between that and mediation, right? Like, is
Well,
it
mediation
arbitration
is
or
is
mediation?
actually required before you can take a matter to court. So, like, if
Yeah,
you want to get a divorce, or you want parenting orders or property settlement orders, you have to first show the court that you tried to go to mediation. So
yeah,
that's something that the government has put in place to try and reduce the amount of matters going to court because for some families, you can resolve it in mediation. Just having that third party there who's neutral and is able to guide you towards negotiation, it works for
yeah.
some people. And if it doesn't work, that's when it's an option to go to the family court.
Wow. Oh, yeah, that makes sense really because else it would just be small escalation and then it
Yeah.
goes to yeah, really makes sense. So let's talk about like in your experience some of the discrimination that you have seen Africans or immigrants in general face here in Australia, and you have vast experience, growing up here. Like, what are some of those discrimination? I ask because there are so many people now that have
Mm,
moved here recently, I myself included, and I've got
yeah.
a young one that's gonna go to school in a bit, and it's
Mm,
kind of like in that exact situation where, for example, his childcare is the only black person
yeah.
in the childcare. And I look around, I'm like, oh God, the first day it was so tough for me. I'm like, oh my God. wow, but anyway, they have like some monitoring things. You can see the activities
Yeah.
and what they're doing to a point, but obviously it's not 24 hours, it's not surveillance like
Oh,
anything.
yeah.
So what advice do you have, like not just childcare, every
Yeah.
level, what advice would you have to give parents like us to help our, you know, our folks, like your mom advocated for you
Yeah.
is one. Yeah.
I think the best advice is that knowledge is power. Because when you know something is not right, you then have the power to speak up about it and to
Yeah.
take action. The story I shared with my mom, she knew that wasn't right. If she
Yeah.
didn't know, she wouldn't have spoken up because she
Yeah.
would have thought it's a usual process. So it's important to know your rights and the rights of your children when you're advocating for them. When it comes to parents and schools and daycares or childcares, there's going to be policies that you signed. You probably didn't read them, but
Oh,
there's
I did
definitely
not. Oh.
policies.
No, to be fair, I had a look because also out
Yeah,
of like I'm looking for comfort. I did look at, but I didn't sit down, take note and
yeah,
really understand every single thing because
yeah,
it's a big document as well. Yeah. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, it's quite overwhelming. But most places are going to have some kind of policy around bullying, harassment, and discrimination. So knowing your rights is going to help you to advocate when those kind of issues do come up, whether it's your child at school or even for yourself, and we can get into that advocating for yourself in the workplace.
yeah, brilliant. I mean, today we have AI and all of that, but before we get into AI,
Mm,
how would you just mentioned knowing what is right, having that information and education, if that's the first step, right? So
yeah,
is it as like simple as you get that contract or term of business or term of whatever, you go and read it, but it's overwhelming, let's be honest.
yeah.
So is there any shortcut or strategies to help busy parent navigate through that, still get enough knowledge? And I know AI can help, but like in your own view, what do you think?
I think the policies are a great way to start, but you can also find support online. I mean, there's community support as well when you look at community groups.
Mm,
They're very helpful as well, people in your community, and also just assessing the place, assessing the school. When you look around, like you said, you saw there was no other Black child there, making note of things like that and
mm.
observing, watching the interactions that teachers might have with your child and being able to call out if something is not right. So there isn't like a clear cut easy step by step guide. Maybe that's something that could be created for parents. But these are
Mm.
just general things I would suggest to do.
I have an idea, maybe like, for example, you get a contract, what is it called? The document they give you, maybe just to get familiar, and contract, you maybe
Yeah.
pop it in a in an AI to get the summary,
Mm,
key highlight, and all of that. Some things that is really important to know, right? Rather than all the fluffs, all the overwhelming doc. Because
yeah.
sometimes I feel like just internal secret, is it deliberate that some of these terms of use, terms and conditions, all of that are so overwhelming
Yeah.
with a lot of details, so people don't read them, or all of the information there to the T are important.
Yes. I actually believe that is a tactic. I
Yeah,
think
you do.
some of the policies and terms and conditions are worded with so much legal jargon that you wouldn't even
Yeah,
understand what you're reading, even if you read it. But if an issue then comes up, they'll then point you to that section and say, okay, well, you signed it here.
yeah, yeah. That's my thought. Like, oh my God, so many. I read like I can't really understand this document, and then you just get disinterested, and then you just
Yeah.
junk it like, oh, anyway, we're going to sign it because you don't have a choice, right? You've got to
Um,
sign it. And
just quickly, what you're touching on is contract law. So, I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer, but contract law, just some simple principles is very important to know. And one of them is unreasonable terms in a contract. So, although you might not understand it, let's say there was an issue, you can always argue that it wasn't explained to you, especially if it's like, a unique term in a contract. Like, if you sign your child up to this daycare, you have to pay an extra sum of 50,000 per year. That's something huge that should be brought to your attention. It shouldn't just be sent to you in a contract. So there's
yeah.
protections in the law for contracts that are unfair and unreasonable to a party as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is great. Good information there. Let's talk about now employment. So
Yes.
two parts I want to touch on. Like first, as a black woman, the discrimination in even to get a job. You did mention earlier, you have a bit of a buffer. Annette Cole sounds English, right? So you don't. But for me, part of the reason why I started using my middle name, which is Noah,
Mm,
is to avoid
mm,
that layer of like
yeah.
discrimination that I've experienced firsthand. Because my other name is Oluwagbenga, and it just happened that when I was applying,
Yeah.
I was just not getting opportunities, even
Yeah.
calls, because one time somebody told me, "Wow, your name is quite long. I struggle to pronounce it, and I don't want to offend you. So,
Mm,
would you consider?" I just tried to call you because I really found that you match this role, so I
yeah.
took the extra step. But would you do you have an English name? That was when I realized that, oh my God, maybe this is something I should pay attention to. And I started using
Mm,
one. I was getting more
yeah.
calls, right? So I saw
Yeah.
that, wow, this is a real thing firsthand. So in your own experience, you've also shared, people assume that you're not a black woman, right?
Yeah.
So are there other like situations or discriminations that you felt,
Yeah.
so far? Yeah.
Um, I think what you've shared is something that is very common, not just against Black people, but just people of color who have
Yeah.
cultural names or names that I guess white people cannot understand. And it's really upsetting when people have to change their names, like yourself, or feel like their application is deterred just because of their name, because that just is not right. It just doesn't capture the capabilities, the skills that someone can bring to an agency, can bring to a company. And I think in that
Yeah.
space, so much more advocacy needs to be done, because at the end of the day, humans have their bias,
Yeah.
and bias shouldn't affect your career progression. It shouldn't affect your economical security, because at the end of the day, not being able to get a job because your name is affecting your financial literacy, because now you're not financially secure because you can't get a certain job or you can't move up in a certain field.
Yeah.
So that's actually something I'm also passionate about. And for me, it's like the flip. I've got a quote unquote white name. And
Yeah.
usually when I go for an interview or something and, they call my name and see me stand up there, you can see the surprise a little bit on their face.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, come in for the interview.
Yeah.
And I've had some instances of strange comments. There was a time I got a call for a job, and they asked for my ethnicity, which looking back, that was odd. But they said,
Yeah.
what's your ethnic background? I said, I'm African from Sierra Leone. And the lady said on the phone, oh, wow, I didn't expect that because of your name. And your English is really good.
Good. Good. Yeah.
And, that conversation just threw me off. And she tried to set up a time for an interview. And I said, I'm no longer interested in this application because that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, I'm not interested in working for a company that this is the representative that they have calling me and making a comment about my English and my ethnic background, because comments like that are microaggressions. And I'm not sure if you've heard of the term, but it's coming up a bit more now with the next generation, everything speaking out more. But those little comments about how you speak, about how you look, about where you're from, are aggressive in a micro form. And they make people of color feel uncomfortable, and they don't create safe spaces. And I think a lot of times people don't even realize that they're saying microaggressive comments, especially in Australia, because one thing about Australia, the racism and discrimination is very casual. It's
Yeah,
not very overt, like, you are black. I don't like
yeah,
black people. But
yeah.
it's just the microaggressive comments that it's still racist what you're implying, comments, I had comments like, where did I live in Sierra Leone? Did I live in a hut? All these negative
Oh,
connotations.
really?
And it's
Someone
it's
said that
just so
to you?
rude.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just so rude to ask those questions, especially at work, because I still see work as professional. I think
Yeah,
some non-black people, they intertwine it too much and they don't separate. Africans are very much like, we're here to work and we keep outside things outside. So
yeah,
sometimes I get asked personal questions, and they're not relevant, and they're also offensive. And in the past, I was
yeah,
never able to speak up. I was just quiet. I just laugh it off, because that's how Australia is, very casual. Like, oh, just have a joke. I didn't mean any harm. Like, come
yeah,
on, mate. Australia's culture is very much like that. And while it's
yeah.
good to be laid back and easygoing, it's also important to speak up and educate, because education is powerful, and it could be a simple mistake, it could not, but it's our responsibility to say something about it and educate that person.
No, I think that is super super advice there, because the other day I was like, oh my God, some people would ask me, oh, where are you originally from? Like, where are you
Yeah,
originally from? I'm
yeah.
like, I'm from Brisbane. No, no, I mean, where are you
Where?
originally from? No, I take it, I don't take it the wrong way. So I just respond, but you also like educating about microaggression is just like,
Yeah,
some of them, they want to like point it out that you are not, I don't know what it is, but like maybe they're trying to, oh, you're not really from here, you're not meant to be here, kind of thing.
yeah.
So because you can see it in the tone, like, oh, no, no, I mean, where are
Where
you
you been?
originally from?
Yeah,
Like, like, oh yeah, I'm from Nigeria. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, where is that?
yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for that. So next thing I wanted to really educate myself on is, so as a black woman, beyond all of these discrimination, given that you studied here, right?
Yeah.
Did you also face like challenges trying to get into professional work, or it was just easy because like you studied here, you have a name that is, discrimination proof in that sense, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Did you still face challenges, or it was like the culture? You were born here, you studied here. Sorry, you were here very young. You studied here, pretty much lived most of your life here. Did you face any issues?
I would say I still did face challenges, because the legal industry is very full. It was very hard to get a job. It's so overpopulated, so many people
Mm,
studying law. And even when you get in, when I did some graduate roles, I still felt the need to really prove myself, because I'm a black woman. The
yeah.
preferred lawyer is a white male, like in most corporate settings, not just law. They're usually at the top of the chain.
Mm,
And when you see someone like myself, often the thought is I'm an assistant, maybe to that white male or something, but I couldn't possibly be a lawyer as well. Like there's
Oh,
times where I would have a meeting with a client and they say, "Where's the lawyer?" And I say, "I'm the lawyer." And they look around, "Oh, okay." Because
really?
it's like they're looking for a particular look of a lawyer and it's not a black woman. I've experienced that
That
before.
is tough. Like
Yeah.
on an ongoing basis, that is tough.
Yeah. And so, I mean, those kind of things, like they mess with you like mentally because you get in this space of like constantly having to prove yourself. And it's like you're trying to survive in this corporate world. You
Yeah,
often hear it said that Black people have to work, two, three, four times as hard as a
yeah,
non-Black person. And a lot of times we work very hard and we still don't get promoted. We still don't
yeah,
get elevated to those positions. Why is that? And that leads to less representation. You don't see many black people in positions of power or up high
yeah,
in leadership. If
yeah,
you do, it's like one
yeah,
per like 1 million, especially in Australia because we're already so little here.
yeah,
You can't
yeah.
compare us to the UK or the US where there's lots more black people. We're already a small community here and we're also underrepresented in positions of leadership. And
Everywhere.
yeah, it's not great to see, but I'm hopeful that this will change because I know that there are some programs in the works. There's an organization called Women of Color Australia, and they have an executive leadership program for women. There's also some
Okay.
other programs I've seen for Africans to get into leadership. And I love to see that because I think it's 2025 and it's about time. There's a lot more of us here now than there used to be. Australia
Yeah,
doesn't have as much migration of Africans compared to other continents, but still
yeah,
we're growing. And there's a lot of us here with a lot of potential, a lot to offer. And I really want to see us grow and excel. And I might
yeah.
just add there's one thing that I particularly want to change, and it's this idea that Africans can only do one type of work in
Ah,
healthcare. I've heard so many stories of people coming to Australia and just being pigeonholed down that path. Like, okay, you're here, I've got you a place, I've got you a job, just this support work. That's all you're going to do. That's all you can get. So immediately, like, it's like we're telling our people there's no hope for you. And we're not allowing them to realize their potential. And they get stuck in this mindset,
oh my
that
God. It's coming from Annette, not from Noah, because I get bashed. I actually reduced it, changing the message really deliberately
Yeah.
because just for my mental health as well. I'm super proud, like what we're doing at Sing Skills, we've been able to change a lot of people's mindset to be more, to dare to be more, to shift that mindset, which is the biggest thing to
Yeah.
actually get done, right? People are stuck in the
Yeah.
mindset. So it's so interesting hearing from you. I had nothing to do with it, but that advice you just gave, like that is our mission. Like it's like an endemic. Like everybody, most
Mm,
people that are coming here, they've got that advice. Oh, you have to start here, do this work, and some people just get stuck there, no hope, you know. So
yeah.
on the back of that, so thank you for that. That is like so powerful. I hope people listening just take that advice really. But like as a lawyer, I've
Yeah.
got a couple of people that have come here. They are lawyers back home, in Nigeria and Africa, and
Yeah.
they're kind of like stuck. Back to the job you've just mentioned, support work, youth work, all of that, because
Yeah.
that is what they feel like is their only hope right now. Do you have any advice? I'm sure you would have some practical advice for someone, for example, that studied law
Yeah.
or they've practiced law back home. I literally have people. In fact, one of them is even working for us right now, trying to
Yeah.
gain some experience doing our compliance, contract, all of those
Yeah.
kind of things. So, what is your advice for such people?
My advice would be firstly, like what you said about the person you referred to get that experience. I think the good thing about law specifically is there's so many law firms, and it just takes some persistent pushing forward. So, contacting like every law firm in your state and just explaining that you would love to work with them, volunteer time if you're able to, just to gain that legal experience, because experience is everything in the legal industry. Even sometimes here you've studied law, but if you don't have experience, you're not going to be as favored even if you studied law here. So if you
Yeah.
studied overseas, I would be looking at reaching out to different law firms. I would also reach out to people in the community and network. I've recently found so much value in networking and even in the legal industry, attending events. It can be for Black people or just general. There's organizations like Australian Professionals of Color and African Professionals Australia that you can reach out to that might be able to connect you with a lawyer. Those organizations also have mentoring programs where you might be able to connect with a mentor who can help you with your resume, who can help you with job ready skills, interview practice. It really takes a lot of determination, because I will say it's not something that can happen instantly.
Yeah.
It's not very often that you'll move and you'll just get a job straight away. But with persistence and just having that resolve to not give up until you get what you want, it's so hard. It's much easier said than done, to keep going, because especially when you're waiting and you know your worth as well, because you know how much value you had overseas. But that's one of the challenges of moving to a new country. But I believe that with persistence and networking with the right people, putting yourself out there, even when it's uncomfortable to network and meet people, you don't know where it can lead you. And then getting that experience is really going to push you forward and help your resume as well.
Wow. So brilliant. I have an idea of something
Mm-hmm.
I've been, maybe you can validate for me as a lawyer
Yeah.
as well. So I think that content is a very big thing right now. So I
Yes.
am thinking for somebody like that, maybe they can, you know, become a solution and, solve it. For example, it can be looking at a website, look at their terms and condition, go
Mm-hmm.
through it, said great things about things that need to be improved, assuming they practice maybe that type of law. I don't know what it's
Yeah.
called. Make a content like this website, this is the company, but their terms and conditions says this is, which is against the law or whatever. Just educating people, right? Making things simple for people, and do that for different niche, right? So, for example, you mentioned family health, and I know that, of course, there are different things around law that you can't say publicly, but it can still be some creative ways to educate people around that, making content, stamping yourself as an authority. And I think that it can help in this new age to start to attract opportunities. And I don't know how easy it is to be like a one man law firm, or what people need to do.
Yeah.
Right? Say, for example, I've got some client and I just want to start my law firm. Do you have any advice? Like, if I can attract client and I don't necessarily need to go beg and work for somebody else, I feel like I have the skills. Do you have any advice with that? And basically what I've said as well around content.
I think with the content idea, it sounds really great. I would just be cautious of defamation claims.
Yeah,
You're speaking on another business, and if it's in a negative way, that's going to deter people from
yeah, yeah,
using them. They could try and sue you. So just maybe a disclaimer that it's just for educational purposes only. You can even reach out to them before you post it
yeah.
and just, show your intention. And then the second part of what you said, can you just repeat that again?
So now let's say I've creatively done and educated people around that space, and then some clients want to work with me.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't have a practice. I don't have a
Yeah.
job. Like, how can I go about, setting up,
Um,
is it
so
easy or no?
uh, well, the first thing is to make sure that you're qualified here. And there
Yeah.
will usually be an admission board in each state, the legal profession admission board, that you can contact and just state where you're from, the qualification that you have, and they'll tell you what's required. You might need to do a short course, you might not need to. You might just need to register. So it's important. That should be the first step. Moving here and wanting to practice law here is to find out what you need to do to be qualified in Australia. And once you have those qualifications, part of it will be a course on managing a legal practice. So you will learn how to set up your business here.
Mm.
And then of course, you're able to attract clients and handle their legal matters. And I think the best way to get clients is networking, like I mentioned before, putting yourself out there, whether it's online or in person, but putting your foot forward. And I think also distinguishing yourself from other law firms. What can I do that's different? What's a small detail that I can pay attention to that other law firms don't? That's
Mm.
something I learned from the book, The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, he talks about, just having something in your business
Yeah.
that most people overlook, but it's something that you're actually going to focus on. That's going to make you stand out.
Yeah, lovely. That makes sense. You've talked about networking a lot, and a lot of my audience, they struggle with that. Even I struggle with it a lot, right?
Yeah,
So sometimes, especially because I live in the regional area, it's like 1.5 hours to drive down to the city sometimes where most of the events are happening. And again, as I said, sometimes psychologically, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the only black person in this place.
yeah,
This is not like my safe space
yeah.
necessarily. And sometimes if I say, okay, let me use the train, then it's like 2.5 hours to get to the
Oh,
city
wow.
and coming back.
Yeah,
So, like, I have to be very deliberate. The event has to what it like it has to be very planned for me to get out, at least to do physical networking. What is
yes,
your advice? How should I go about networking and
yeah.
building that, network?
I think when it comes to physical networking, you really just need to push yourself. I know exactly what you're saying because it's something I've experienced. And I'm not the most extroverted person.
Mm,
So for many years, I didn't network. It's only something I've started doing in the last year because I was just, I don't want to go out and talk to people and make conversation. I'm not good at making conversation. I get awkward. I get shy. It's kind of daunting just going to approach someone that you don't know
yeah,
and talking about yourself or finding a topic to talk about. But I've learned that the first time is hard, but like with anything, with practice, you get better. You get more
yeah,
comfortable. You feel more relaxed.
yeah,
And some things you can do to help, before is like breath work. You can take a deep breath. You can do something fun before to take the pressure off, so you're not too tense. Listen to your favorite song or something. When before you go to the event, even just like rehearsing in the mirror what you might say, practice talking to yourself. They're all really great skills, which are also used in public speaking. And networking is kind of like public speaking because you have an audience and you have something that you're trying to say and you're trying to communicate that.
yeah.
And,
That's great. Yeah,
communication is two ways. There's a sender and the receiver. So you're sending a message to that person you're networking with. If they're not receiving it, there's no point and it's not real communication. You're just sending a bunch of messages. So it's good to practice and make sure that what you're going to say is actually going to be received by that person, is actually going to make them think, it's going to leave a mark and leave them interested. And of course, have something tangible like a business card or something.
mm,
Um, so that's physical, but there's also online networking. I've done that a lot. I've messaged a lot of people just on LinkedIn, or Instagram. And it's kind of the same as in person in terms of you're just putting yourself out there, but it's a bit less scary because you can't see them. They
yeah,
might leave you on red. That's okay.
yeah. So you
Happens.
move on. Yeah,
Yeah. message another person. But sometimes you'll be surprised like how open and willing people are.
Yeah.
Sometimes we put, the thought in our own heads that, oh no, it's going to be weird. It's going to be cringe, they're not going to respond to me. And you come up with all these reasons why not, why it won't work before you've even tried it to
Yeah.
see if it would work. And
Yeah.
once, you get one or two replies, it gives you that confidence, that feel, okay, yeah, this person responded positively. This person actually got back to me. This person is actually really helpful. So let me message some other people. Like the first event that I did for Amplify Black Women, I just messaged people on LinkedIn and they actually showed up like to be a guest speaker and for free. And after that, they've become like my friends and some of them my mentors as well that I go to for advice. They always think of me and share events that are happening, like the Welcoming Australia
Yeah.
conference I was telling you about. That was from one of my mentors who I had messaged on LinkedIn for the first ABW event. So you see like that connection. You just don't know where it's going to lead you in the future. And just one more thing, there's a lot of talk around mentorship and a lot of people ask about it. How can I find a mentor? What is mentorship? And I think it's amazing. And there's these ways to connect with people that you want to learn from. But another concept I think most people don't consider is sponsorship. And I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's different from mentorship. So mentorship is more getting guidance and support from someone in a particular field, a particular
Yeah.
area that you want them to speak into your life. But sponsorship is the next level of mentorship. It's where that person actually advocates for you even when you're not around. So rather than just directing you to go to, this place, when you're not there, they tell people about you. They say, have you heard about Noah? He's doing this incredible work with Sync Skills Australia. You should
Yeah.
reach out to him. He'd be great to partner with. So they're really thinking of you and opening doors for you. When they're seated at a table, they're pulling up a seat next to them and say, Noah, come join this conversation.
Yeah. No, that's so brilliant. You practice that a lot. We met because I saw your message on Instagram, and that was how we connect.
Yeah.
Also, speaking about sponsorship, the last time we talked, you shared about how you mentioned us to Timmy. Timmy reached out as well, and we connected. And
Yeah.
Timmy went and taught us about B2B with our mission to actually place our talent now to recruiters, to companies that are needing them. He
Yeah.
walked us through like 1 hour plus session,
Oh,
teaching
wow.
us. Yeah, it was great. The coincidental thing, like actually it's calling me now.
Oh, wow.
um,
That's so
I'm
crazy.
like, I'm gonna call you back. I'm on a
That's so cool.
podcast, right? So I'm gonna ring him back. So that is like so profound that you actually practice what you say, and it's like one scary thing for everybody, networking, like, especially even people in our community, many of them are so tired from work, they don't even have time to, network.
Yeah.
And it's a cliche, but your network is your net worth, really.
Yes.
It is. I've gotten so many opportunities from people that know me.
Mm-hmm.
And these days is even people that know you, not so much about people you know. What I
Yeah.
mean is like you may know people, but they don't want to help you. But
Yeah.
more people that know me, for example, from content that I'm creating, some event I go, they're like, no, I've seen your post before. I know what you talk about. I'm like, yeah, okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, I resonate with you. I want to do this. I want to do that, right? So you get a lot of opportunity when people also know you. So
Yeah.
you need to try, which is hard,
Yeah.
but you need to try. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that my own framework for networking these days first is to give value
Mm.
and focus on not because sometimes I want to get a job, so I want to go for that networking event. That's not
Mhm.
how it works, right?
Yeah.
You dig your well before you can actually fetch water.
Yeah.
So build connections, like get to know people, give value without wanting something in return first. Secondly, in the framework is I want to make sure that I introduce myself and what I do in a way that is memorable. You know what
Yeah,
I do. You can remember, oh, Noah does this, like you
yeah,
mentioned, so you can sponsor me later without
yeah,
me even asking. And the third thing is follow up, because
yeah,
sometimes we meet people once and that's it. We just move on,
yeah.
and the relationship dies. But the follow up, making sure you're building the rapport is also very important, I find. So I wanted to also touch on like just leveraging your experience as well. Like, so people that get unfairly treated at work. So for example, I've had instances where some people like, oh, I got injured at work and I can't go to work, and the company are not paying me for anything. I don't know what. There was even one bad one. She got beaten by a dog, and she was like, yeah, they just told me to take a rest. They compensated me a little, but I can't work, and she's losing income. She can't work, and which is really sad.
Yeah.
So, what is like your advice on from that? I know there's fair work for people to refer to. Again, we don't like to read, um, but yeah, from your experience, how do we navigate those kind of situations?
Yeah, no, look, just as you mentioned, Fair Work is a really great resource. And it's not just about reading, a bunch of information. It's actually a initiative that the government has put in place to protect people. And immigrants need to remember that you're also protected. You're not separate from the Australians, and don't have that
Yeah,
mindset of, oh, well, they're not going to care about me. I'm just an immigrant. No, you're very much a valuable part of this society. You add value and depth to Australia, and your story and your voice matters. That's one thing I want to make clear. And so, with that, it's really important to feel comfortable to step up and advocate for yourself. Just like my mom had advocated for me, you need to advocate for yourself in the workplace. And again, knowledge is power. Knowing what your rights is so important. Maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, but whenever I start a job, I read everything. I read the contract, I read the policies, because I want to know. I want to be able to protect myself. Because
yeah,
I think also employers take advantage of the fact that people don't read things.
yeah.
Maybe in the future something will change to make it more accessible, maybe a video rather than document or something, so people can actually engage. Who knows? But knowing what's in your employment contract is important because it helps you with fair work as well. Because some employers might be dodgy and they'll put in terms, clauses in the contract that are unfair to you. And
Yeah.
that's where you can rely on that to take action. So fair work is also good, but I think also outside of legal processes, I definitely recommend keeping notes on everything that happens. I usually send myself an email if something happens. So there's a timestamp on it. You can see the date and the time that it was sent. You can always refer back to it, particularly when it comes to workers' compensation claims. It's important to note that workers' compensation isn't just for physical injuries, it's also for psychological injuries. And if you're in a
Oh.
situation where you're struggling with the workload and it's affecting your mental health and you can't sleep and you're working long hours and your quality of life is being reduced, that's actually a valid claim under workers' compensation. Many people don't know that, especially Africans, because sometimes we overlook our mental health. We just keep pushing and say, you know what, life is not easy. We have to keep going. But there's times when
Really?
I actually need to speak up. Yeah. So when it comes, it's called psychological harm. There's physical harm or psychological harm. So you can actually claim psychological harm. But what's going to help with a claim like that is a lot of record keeping. So if you're having issues at work with the workload and how it's affecting you, you've brought it up to a manager. They haven't done anything about it. Every time you bring it up to the manager, send yourself an email. On this date, I spoke to manager. I explained that I can't sleep, I can't eat, blah, blah, blah. And they said they'll do something about it. 2 days later, they gave me more work. Keep the record of notes because
Ah,
that's going to help you.
because that was going to be my next question. How do you blur the lines between false claims and because
Yeah,
most jobs are stressful. We can't sleep.
yeah.
I'm like,
And you
even
know,
me running my business, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm
and
gonna
that's the opposite. You can't
Yeah,
sue yourself.
like work is stressful by nature.
Yeah,
So if an employee is also telling me right now, like I can't sleep, well, I can't sleep. I need to make
yeah,
payroll. So I lose sleep a lot of time thinking like, oh my God, payroll is almost here. How am I going to pay all these
yeah,
people, right? So
yeah,
where's the line? But like you said, it's like record keeping. You take active steps to say this is the impact on my life, and no action. So yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
I also recommend numbers because people like numbers. Sometimes they don't want to hear your mental health, they don't want to hear how you feel, but they
Yeah.
will listen to numbers. And it can look like, writing down all the things that you have to do and how many hours there are in a day. If you can show that it's significantly higher than the amount of time you have in that week, that's a statistical figure that's going to help prove your point. Like, they've
Mm,
asked me to do X, Y, Z, and this is how many hours I have. This is my lunch break. This is
mm,
how much time each task takes. It's just not possible to be able to complete each of these tasks this week based on how long the task will take and how many hours are in the week.
mm. Oh, that's so insightful. Um, I know some of the contract says um, they put all your JD and they say any other business as
Yeah,
required,
yeah,
right, to cover themselves. So
yes,
how do
that's
you, what if they say, well, if you were efficient, you do that in 1 hour, why are you taking 6 hours to do that? So how do you defend that?
well, that's where you advocate on what any other business is. So you would argue that it's not reasonable, and reasonability is going to be subjective to each person, right? So you have to show why it's not reasonable to you.
Hmm. Well, that's a bit dicey. I
Well,
mean, in law,
that's law.
in
It's not
law,
black and white.
yeah,
That's
I'm just like, in law, the person that has the most money wins. In this case, your company, they get the best lawyer, you lose. How about
no,
that?
because you have to realize that also companies have a lot to lose as well. They've got reputational risk to think about
Hmm.
because claims like this affect them. They could be in the media. It can affect their staff. They could have a higher turnover. So they usually have to think of themselves as well, and their legal team will advise them whether it's going to be worth it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's another angle as well.
And most
But
times, honestly, it's just easier to pay out a compensation than go through the whole process because even them paying their lawyers is going to cost more than the compensation amount, depending on what the amount is.
yeah, but like in terms of that, would that not ruin your reputation as an employee? Because that's part of the
Yeah,
stigma people have,
that
like, oh,
people
you
don't.
dragged your
Yeah,
company, then reference check, all of the other things for future jobs you don't get because
yeah.
obviously. So would you advise anyone to do that?
Yeah, that it's a really good question because it's something I've thought about as well. And there is a lot of stigma, and it makes sense, because as much as you might be having troubles at this workplace, it can affect your future capability to obtain another employment. But that's where I say it's important to weigh up everything. So it depends what you're going through, and you need to really look at the pros and cons of lodging a claim for workers' compensation. You need to
Yeah,
really assess. It's going to be up to the individual whether it's something you can deal with, whether there's any other avenue as well. Maybe you move to a different business area or you just move to another job, which is what most people do. If you have an issue,
yeah,
they just move somewhere else. So it's not for everybody. If you want to advocate for yourself through workers' compensation, just know the risks that come with it. Like with any decision you make, there's going to be risk, there's going to be consequence. It's just about what you're willing to accept.
yeah. For really bad one, and this is right winding down, really bad one where I know I've been unfairly treated and I can't
Yeah,
actually take it, right? But also I don't have legal fees because even consultation from legal, oh my goodness,
yeah,
is like so
I know.
expensive. How do I, because that's where some of these things die. I'm like, oh yeah, it's 1,000 to do a consultation. I'm like, let's dead the idea.
Yeah.
So how do you, what are there resources like where you can find someone to advocate for you?
Yeah. My first stop would be legal aid. Most states have legal aid, a
Mm,
government funded free legal advice and free legal representation, but depending on your income. So they have income tests and means tests to see if you can afford a lawyer. But they're usually happy to help. I would also look for community legal centers. A lot of local councils have them where they offer pro bono legal work. Always a good advice to get some free advice first, especially a community legal center, because the lawyers who work there are usually passionate about community engagement, community empowerment. They want to help people who may not have the resources. And so, yeah, legal aid and community legal centers would be a good starting point to get
mm.
support.
No, that's so brilliant. So many resources on this chat today. I said it, guys. It's incredible. Now, so where can people find you? I'm sure a lot of people be like, oh, Anel, I gotta chat with Anel, connect with that. How can yeah, I'm gonna put your LinkedIn and stuff
Yeah.
description, but like how can they find you? Where would you like to be found? And your tell us about Amplify Black Women.
Yeah. So about me, I'm mostly on LinkedIn. That's my personal page. I don't have a personal Instagram or
Oh, really?
Facebook that I share. Um, so it's mostly just LinkedIn, but online you can find me on Instagram at Amplify Black Women, but it's BLK Women. And what I do at Amplify Black Women is I host a series of events, and there's three main pillars: mental health and well-being, financial literacy, and professional development. So these three main pillars are the events that we focus on. And the reason is because these areas, I believe, are really crucial for our community to learn, to network, and to be able to thrive. And I think all three of them, there's issues, there's challenges that we face, and they're unique to who we are. A lot of times I get asked, why is it black women? Why not black men?
Yeah.
Or why is it just black? Why isn't it
Yeah.
multicultural, ethnic, or people of color? And I always say that it's not to exclude other groups.
Yeah.
It's more just to decenter the focus, because the focus of Black women is not often shown in mainstream spaces. So
Yeah.
we need our own safe spaces curated for us and by us. But of course, supporters, allies, friends are always welcome. People who are also committed to the cause, who are also passionate about amplifying the voices and the experiences of Black women here in Australia.
No, that's brilliant. That is a noble cause. I'm really passionate about that as well. As I said, we're coming to Sydney pretty soon
Oh,
as
yeah?
well. So we're gonna connect and have you
Yes,
as
please let
a
me know.
guest. Yeah, I think that's June 28th.
Is
So we're
that
doing. Yeah,
Black Wealth Connect?
is that what?
Is that Black Wealth Connect? Because they have an event on the 28th. Do you know
Oh
Black
no,
Wealth?
no, I don't know
No?
that. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's career day, Think Skills Career Day, basically. So I'll fill you on the details, but yeah,
Okay.
it'd be great to have you as a guest to share more with people as well. If you're free. So yeah, I'm doing it publicly so that you can say yes, I'm gonna come. So thank you
Wow,
so
you
much.
really put me on the spot. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
did. I
forward to
did. See
getting
what
more
I did there.
details.
But thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I'm sure when this goes live as well, so many people would have gotten value from this conversation. We would like to have multiple of, bring you back on the pod pretty
Yeah,
soon. And yeah, this is so much value. Thank you so much. And
thank you for
yeah,
having
I
me.
appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well, and Sync Skills. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. There's so much to discuss. Honestly, the
There's
topic
so
we
much.
talked
The time
about
goes by
was
quick.
forever.
It
But
does go
yeah,
by
for now,
quick, but it's great. We're gonna chat a bit more. But
yeah.
guys, thank you so much for watching. Please, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, share with somebody. This is a super pack episode, like I promised you. So many details, resources from our amazing guest Annette Cole. You can find out. We'll pop the description below as well. So to the next episode, we see you. Take care. Bye.